Hello, everyone. We have an experiment for you today.
Yeah, we have sped up the following episode by 20%.
Exactly, because we realize we are a boring show, but we can be a little bit faster at that.
More efficiently boring, basically.
Yes. Yeah, so please give us feedback. Is it too fast? Is it too slow?
Yeah, not fast. We could go faster.
We can go very, very fast.
Yeah, but it's an experiment, so please leave a comment below if you have strong feelings one way or the other, and let us know what you think.
Hello, everyone. My name is Filip, and this is Andrew.
Hello.
Hi, Andrew. And you're again watching The Boring Show. So today we are going to look into isolates.
Yes.
And that's a very exciting topic. And this is because why would we want to use isolates? Because of performance, right? Not that we see any problem with the performance of our app, I don't think, yet. No. But still, it's nice to not do things on the main thread. And this episode, let's just start coding, right? A little introduction. What we do here, this is the Hacker News app. If you haven't seen it, it's just a reader for Hacker News. It has top stories, news stories. We have some mechanism called Hacker News tab and Hacker News notifier that tells us, or that lets us just basically talk to the API of Hacker News. And when I say talk, I mean listen. We don't say anything to it. Yeah. Basically, what we're doing is we get the articles list from them, and then we parse it, and then we show it here, and that's it, right? And in the last few episodes, we did things like navigation and favorites and all that, and we'll get back to that. But I think it's a nice idea to just go to the performance stuff.
Yeah, and so I think we get a lot of questions about isolates and multi-threading in Dart, mainly because I think people think they need to know it. And I think that one of the interesting things is you can do almost everything you want to do with Flutter and Dart without ever creating an isolate. Like Dart, uses an event loop. It does asynchronous stuff very, very naturally. And you don't always need to go to the trouble of spinning up another isolate to do something. One of the ways it can help us in this app, though, is if we do download a whole bunch of articles in one call and then need to parse them out of JSON and into an in-memory representation. We could do that off the main thread, so to speak, with an isolate, and make sure that if our app needs to rebuild, if it's doing an animation or something like that, it's able to render frames and it's not going to be blocked. So
right. So it's again, we don't see anything terrible in terms of performance of this particular app, but it's a best practice probably to do your non-UI related workload out of the main UI thread. And here we're actually doing a lot. If we switch to the screen, you can see that we have Parse Stories here, Parse Top Stories, which is basically it, get IDs, I guess. Gets all the, it fetches from HTTP the whole thing, which is like a huge JSON file, and then it parses that into a string, and then it parses that string with that huge string into, map. Representation, and then it takes the first 10 of those. So we do all that work, and then we're like, oh no, we just want the first 10. Yeah. And then, but there's no other way to do it, right? Like if you want to parse a JSON, you probably want to first get the whole JSON, and you have to parse it the whole thing. And then from there we go and parse the sub parts of that big list into articles, and then we show them, right? So we have this article class, and that is basically all we want to show to the user. And we have what I was just showing, which is the get IDs and then get articles from each. That's a lot of work that we're doing on the main thread asynchronously, so it's not a huge deal. Okay, let's do the easiest way to do any kind of multi-threading in Dart, and that is the compute method. Maybe let's talk about multi-threading.
Yeah. So we actually just put out a series on asynchronous stuff in Dart. One of the things we mentioned in the very, very first one was how isolates are constructed. What an isolate is. But to sort of give the short version, the way in Dart, all Dart code is executed in an isolate, which is just a little space in memory on the machine. It's a little section of memory that's blocked off for a particular isolate, and it's one thread running an event loop. And so if you're running Dart code and you have stuff that's like waiting on button taps or events, from HTML, if you're using Dart HTML or things like that, there's a little event loop that processes those, and it's allowed to modify this block of memory that's in this isolate. And so you have this little box with memory and a thread, and then if you want to do another thread, if you want to do something so big that it's going to be very busy for a long time, you can create another one of those little isolates, another one of those little boxes, and has its own thread and its own event loop and its own block of memory. And there's no shared memory between the two. That's one of the things that you're going to see when we get into this. In order to have data passing back and forth between the two, they can't just have pointers to the same piece of memory. They actually have to make a message, pass it from one isolate to another, and copy the contents of that message into the memory of the other isolate, the one that receives it. And so it's the source of the name isolate. These little spaces are kept isolated from one another and can only communicate via passing messages.
And this is how Dart tries to kind of sidestep the issue of multithreading in many other languages, where it just gets really gnarly to like synchronize threads and stuff like this. Here it's just like, oh, you have an isolate. All you can do is just post messages between the two. That said, we have a helper method in Flutter called compute, which does most of the heavy lifting for you. And let's read the docs. Spawn an isolate, run the callback. Okay, maybe I don't want to read it here.
I assume this is going to get down into the runtime pretty quick as you go.
Compute. Wait, I'm looking at Dart lang now. So that would be flutter.dev and docs and API docs.
You can probably just use search.
Okay.
Although compute's such a generic term, it might return like the phone book.
No, I think you're right. Yes.
There we go.
Compute property. Wow. I thought I would get a proper...
It's just the same comment you had before.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line, compute, it spins up an isolate for you. It takes a function. So it spins up an isolate. It gives that function to the isolate and says, hey, run this. And at the same time, it gives it a parameter to say, and here's some data to start you off. And then it goes off and it runs that function on the other isolate. And then whatever return value comes out of that function gets passed back as a message and pops out as the return value of compute.
Right. Yes. So that was what I was looking for is the signature, which is like now like through type devs, but basically it's you give it callback. So let's give it a callback, and you have to use a callback that's not a method, I think, or is it?
So it returns a future, so that's how you get the data out of it. You're giving it a method that...
But it cannot be like it has to be a static method. It cannot be a method on an object because, right?
So that wouldn't have that object in shared. We should try it and see what happens.
What's Parse Stories? Oh, it is a static method. So Parse Stories, we just give it the terof, right? Like just let's just do like final result or var. I see a lot of vars here. So and then.
So it needs the function and it needs the data to give to Parse Stories.
Body. What is going on? Analysis. Could an infer type parameter Q? Okay.
So compute has two type parameters. There's Q, which is the type of what you're going to give it as its parameter. And then there's R, which is the type that it's going to return when it's done.
So string versus, what does it do? I think it's a list of articles. No list of int. Oh, we're starting with
just the IDs, right?
Yes. All right. So we have this, and then we still just take 10. Okay.
Do you want to put a then on it? Because that result is going to be a feature.
Or, and now result. I think this is a list. Oh, yeah. We're taking 10, so which is not a list, and then we have to go to list again. All right. So let's see if this actually works. So.
See, if this works on the first try, I'm going to high five you. Just letting you know it's coming.
All right. Let's see. Should I just?
Do you want to do a full hot restart just to be sure?
I want that high five. So
what do we got? Did that?
Yep.
Nice job.
All right. So I think.
And we got nothing in the console, right? No like. Hey, I'm giving you old data because that didn't work. Huh?
Nope.
All right.
So get IDs. I still don't understand. Maybe we just have an old, but why does it say parse stop stories? Because this should be parsing all stories, right?
I think there's two. It's been a while since I was on the Boring Show, as you can tell, and working on the Hacker News app. Aren't there two calls that we do? There's one to get the ID, and then another series of calls to sort of hydrate them.
I think it just says parse. It should say parse stories IDs or something like that. Yeah. You know, like it's not top stories.
Yeah, because there's parse article.
Yes.
Yeah.
So parse story IDs.
We should look at the Hacker News app before we change it, just because that top stories may be the particular call.
I'm almost.
Okay.
So, you know, we had.
Like I just said, I haven't touched this app in several months, so I shouldn't be like.
No, I'm pretty sure we had like parse top stories, and then we had like we basically copy pasted 2 methods, and then only one survived, and it still has this legacy. So I think we're fine with this.
I will trust you.
Thank you, and means a lot. Update articles is what? What is this? Oh, this is just something. What we want is actually get articles, which calls parse articles. It does 0 error thing. Like we should at least have a try catch, right, for this maybe.
Because this does come up occasionally. They'll get
yes.
That's come up in other episodes, right, where we get like top stories gives you a list of 10 article IDs, and then it turns out that like number 8 is no longer an article.
Yeah,
and so it fails.
Yeah, but we can't really like put a try catch around a compute, because compute will just, you know, it creates a new isolate. It might actually send us some errors. I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I mean, it returns a future, so the future could certainly complete with an error, but whether the implementation of compute is smart enough to like run things in a zone and catch an unhandled exception and report it properly.
Let's try it. Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
So
you're just gonna spin up compute and be like, here's a function that just throws an error.
I'm just gonna give it like a false URL, and it's gonna fail trying to parse a URL that's not really. You know.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but first of all, we're basically we do get this. We're not even checking if this is like we're doing nothing basically here, saying like, oh yeah, this like, you know, this what happens here basically, right? And I think we should just throw maybe.
So this is get. Oh, I thought you were going to do this in the call that we just did with compute.
That's also that's the next part. But I'm like, if we don't even get the HTTP request back, I think we should do something and not just like ignore it, right?
Okay.
Should we throw?
Well, I mean, it is right now. It's throwing, right? Because it would.
Well, this one. If we.
Oh, if it returns a 2 or a 404 or something like that, you're right. So. Okay.
So what kind of throw? I just default to state error, even though it's kind of terrible. But and we can.
Is there state exception? So we could get into errors versus exceptions, because this would be an exception rather than an error, right? It's a recoverable. This is something that came up around the shop recently. The difference between errors and exceptions, and I think we just go like in Dart land, there is a standard for those 2 terms. Like an exception is a bad state, but one that's expected to happen occasionally and is not the fault of the program, the app. Like this, like you expect every now and then you might get a 404 or a 500 from a web server that's not working properly, or a bad ID or something. And so you're expected to handle that and move on. And so that's an exception. Whereas an error would be like, you just asked me to divide by 0. What's wrong with you? Kind of a thing.
Right.
That's the fault of the app itself. And so that would count as an error. What are we doing?
I'm trying to do the right thing here and say, oh, I don't need to? Wow.
As a...
Yeah, generative constructor. Okay.
Wait, was it factory method? A factory constructor?
Yeah, I think what it wants is a message like this. Why?
Go look at the constructor there. I think it said something about a factory method.
You mean this one?
Yeah, so that's a factory constructor rather than a typical one.
Right, but it's just like it. Okay, how does everyone else do it?
Yeah, when in doubt, copy from others.
Right. Oh, you just see doing the right thing, but also getting the little. The generative constructor exception that is.
This is because we don't use factor constructors all that often.
Yeah, but also like I thought it's much easier to construct your own exception, and I'm getting a little. Is it implements? You know what? Let's see. Like a normal exception would be what? HTTP exception. What do they do? Yeah. Oh, it's implementing. Okay.
Implementing the interface
Yeah.
as opposed to extending it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that doesn't come up. We should mention that real quick. So there's two ways that you can.
Oh yeah.
You can extend something. So if you have an abstract class, every class in Dart defines an interface as well as a class, right? With its public methods. And so you can either extend that class and get access to all of its stuff as a superclass, like properties and things like that, or you can implement it, in which case you're just saying, I'm going to fill out the same methods in my class, and so you can use it as if it were that class, right? And so exception with its, I mean, it's just a marker almost, I think.
Yeah.
It has a message in it, and that's about it.
You can, in Dart, you can throw anything, turns out. Like, you can be like, oh, just let's throw a string.
Or just throw 4.
Yeah.
Anything but null, I think you're allowed to throw.
Yeah. Oh, you can throw
You can't throw null. At least I don't think so. Oh, what?
Well, I mean, like, aesthetically, you could maybe. But anyway.
I swear I looked that up once.
So I'm just going to do Hacker News API exception. And
fun fact, Googling Dart throw, not useful at all for coding. Got a lot of videos on how to throw darts, but nothing nothing on my actual needs.
Story. Is there like a message for this? You know what, I'm just gonna cheat here and not do the message or make it optional. Okay. So, so now we're actually throwing something when there's a status code that's non-200 or if the body is null, which at least makes me a little happier that we fail fast, even though we should probably catch the exception and then show something to the user. Okay, back to isolates. So we have this, and we already know how to deal with this. So we have final result is waiting for a compute call. That compute call gets parse article. The what do you call it? Terath, right? Like if you're, yeah, it's basically just the function. We could actually this might be confusing if you're not familiar with just like passing around functions, but we could just do something like this, right? Data and do something here, and that's the exact same thing. You're basically giving it a function. So parse article, nope, and then the data is again story res body. And we're awaiting, and then we're basically saying, what does this get us?
You should just do underscore cached articles ID equals await.
Yeah, I could. I was gonna put a try catch around.
Oh, okay.
So just result, right? And now try catch. Oh, yeah. You know what? Maybe you're right. I should just try catch everything here.
Well, if you don't put a try catch on there, it's going to throw a Hacker News API exception, right? If the compute fails.
Well, the Hacker News here, this one only happens if the actual HTTP GET thing gives us different than 200.
Right.
So this is trying to catch the parse errors.
Right. That's what I was saying. If we don't put another try catch statement in
there.
Yeah.
Then... Okay. Sorry. So you were right.
Oh, wait, that's not a. Huh? Never mind. I'm confused.
So like this, and then catch. Ooh, it's gonna be. What kind of errors should?
Do we? Yeah. What? I'm curious what type it is. You can just
okay,
like print the runtime type, just so we know what it is.
Print e.
Yeah.
And also throw. Okay. So once again, if we get the status code right and we have a body, we will hopefully spin up a new isolate, and that parses the article. At this point, we're kind of abusing, I think, compute, because for like we get 10 articles.
This is going to be slow, yeah, which is an interesting point that we should make actually. So let's just see what happens.
All right. So I'm going to just pretend that this should work, and
yeah.
Ooh. Wow.
What is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, let's open up. There we go. Yeah, let's see what happened there.
Okay, I feel like we should probably report this. This is this is definitely not something that we should go away with. I'm gonna full restart.
Okay, hold on. Do one.
Yes.
One. Okay, try it again and see if it crashes again. But then I have something I'd like to try.
Okay. Article.
I'm so spoiled. I hate full app restarts and rebuilds.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, maybe
it was a weird hot restart.
Yeah, it was a hot reload. I was just like, feeling lucky. So this sounds like, yeah, it does seem a little slow, yeah. And that's because basically we get the IDs, and then we are, now it's not going to be slow because we're actually caching the articles like the cool people we are. But otherwise,
how are those? Are those just cached in memory?
Yeah,
they're not like written
yes,
anywhere. Okay.
Which is good for us because now we can try things.
So we should talk about the downside of doing it this way. Yeah. So the downside, the compute is really, really cool if you're doing one little thing and you're not going to do it that often, or not even a little thing, but like one particular thing. You're not going to be doing that same thing 20 times at once or anything like that, because it's very, like, the code is dead simple to you're spinning up an isolate and like passing this message to it and getting the result, and it's like one line of code for you to call compute, because it does all this stuff on your behalf. The downside of it is that when you call compute, it spins up a whole isolate for you, runs this one function, and then tears the entire isolate down because you're done with it at that point. So if we're doing this, like if we went from like take 10 to take 50 or something like that on that list of articles, we'd be spinning up 50 isolates at once to run these things off the main isolate, and then tearing all 50 down, and then the next time it reloaded to be doing the same thing.
Actually, I think with the way we were doing it, let me see. Do we actually do it in parallel? I don't think so. We're like iterating. So we spin up an isolate, we do the processing, we tear it down, we spin up another one, we tear. Oh no!
We're waiting the compute.
We're waiting.
Right?
Oh. Okay, yeah, cool. So we're
but it's still
it's
one, then tear it down, and two, then tear it down, and so you're still spinning up all these isolates that you don't necessarily need.
Right.
Or you could.
It's cool that we can do that.
Yeah, it is still pretty cool. But a more efficient way to do this would be to actually make something to manage that isolate, and to have a long-running isolate that can handle repeated requests for articles.
Which I think we'll do. Okay. But first, let me try and crash the compute method. Okay. Yeah. So like if we do items, and now we do this.
Isn't that gonna? Yeah, it's gonna get down here. It's never gonna get to try. I would do.
I know.
Instead of the body, just give it a garbage string there. That would probably do it.
Yeah. Or.
Oh, get rid of the items there.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
You know what? Let's do it again. Oh. We have to restart. No, we have to restart everything. Yeah. I was like, stop doing things. All right.
It's reminding me I gotta release Veggie Seasons today.
Oh yeah.
Or one of our iOS samples, Veggie Seasons. We need to push a new version of it to the App Store. It's not really. I mean, it's an actual app. It just happens to be open source. But we need to push a new version.
Wow.
This is interesting.
So I'm looking at. So I think it's just gonna do like 20 of these.
So are we stopped? Is it broken on exception?
It looks like, yeah.
Or is that the old one that we got before?
No, this is a new one. But we're in a... yeah, okay. So we are stopped in one of the isolates. Yeah. And it takes its time to kind of collect all the data of what's happening there.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not... I mean, I was kind of assuming that it would be completely transparent to us and the isolate would not, show up in the IDE, in the debugger, but it does, which is cool. But it's also, well, I can show you.
Can you keep running and see what happens? Sounds like your laptop is taking off.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Yeah.
Do you want to just kill this and start out doing it the right way?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
So I think let's do it with an actual isolate. So how does one make isolates?
You use the spawn method. Isolate.spawn.
Okay, so we probably, when we are creating the Hacker News tab.
Just hide your debug window there.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So when we're creating the Hacker News tab, or probably tab. So that would be one isolate per tab. Is that okay?
What is the isolate going to do? Are we going to have it parse the story IDs, or are we going to have it parse articles, or both?
So yeah, I was actually, you're right. You have a much better idea, because I was thinking, let's just at the start of a tab, let's start an isolate and use it as a util isolate, which would always be running, but mostly just waiting for messages. But I think it's much better to be now we are starting something's starting to happen. Let's spin up the isolate and then let it do the work, and then immediately after that kill it. Sounds good?
So we kill it after
we get all the articles.
And then what happens if they hit refresh again?
We spin it up again. Yep.
Okay.
Let's see what happened. Yeah, basically here, refresh, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think we're calling refresh even at this very start of all of this. So we would be here, spin up the isolate, then do this on the isolate somehow, and then destroy the isolate.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So isolate spawn is a thing. Spawn, is it just spawn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the function, which definitely needs to be either top-level function or a static function of a method, right?
Yeah, not an instance method.
So what do we call it?
Isolate entry point. Call it,
Yeah. So will we call it workrise one?
Well, this is just a function name, right?
Yeah, but yeah. Okay, isolate
entry. Yeah.
All right. And again, this is just the function itself, and then this is probably the first message that we send it, is it?
Yeah. So this is your one chance. If you want it to be able to communicate with you, you need to send along with that message a way for it to communicate with you.
Right.
And so isolates do that with these things called send ports, usually.
Right. So we want to do, maybe we do something like a receive port. I always forget. All right, let's.
So then we would make a send port, and we would give it, we would give that to the isolate, and then we'd listen to the receive port that's part of the send port.
Right.
I believe is how that works.
Usually the initial message contains a send port so that the spawner and spawnee can communicate with each other. Good idea. So, and send port is basically I think you can just do send port. Send port is send port. Is it?
Oh, we make the receive port. So we make a receive port, and the receive port has a send port.
Oh, we make the receive port.
Mm-hmm. So you could say final, receive port equals new receive port. And then that message could be receive port dot send port.
Yes. Do we want to unwrap this? So we are we have two isolates and we need them to communicate to each other through something we call ports. There's send port and receive port. The receive port is what I'm listening to for messages coming from outside, from the other isolate. And send port is what I use to send messages to that isolate. And so here we're in the main isolate and we're I have a receive port, which means I can receive messages from you. what I'm going to do is I will give you, but not the receive port, but I will give you the the other end of the hose, basically. Take that and put things into it. All right.
It works very much like a stream.
Right. Yeah. So there's errors are fatal, on exit, on error, debug name. I don't think we need to do this. And what does spawn give us?
It returns an isolate object, or future an isolate object, because it's possible for it not to work. If you're like running out of memory on your device, that it can be like, I don't have enough memory to spin up an isolate. Sorry, you know. And it returns a future of an isolate because it takes a second for it to go spin up this isolate, and then it comes back and.
So let's make sure that we kill the isolate. Can we kill?
Yep.
Whoa.
And there's no -9 for fun, but.
Is this? No, it's void. It's just like. All right, and then we need to create the method, and it's not going to be. Should we do it a static method?
Yes, it needs to be a static method.
I mean,
it's supposed to be a top level.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
top level methods still make me feel weird.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. Like they're very darty and idiomatic to Dart, but like coming from like C# and Java and other languages, I'm like, that just feels wrong.
Can this be private?
Yes.
All right. So, and now we basically in this method we need to basically do everything, right? So we can do things like we get the message, which can be not just the send port. Later we will be sending other stuff.
I don't want to cast that.
Yeah. So if message is send port, then I guess should we just like do it all in one method? That feels weird.
So what are we actually going to do in this method? Are we going to listen for messages?
Yeah, and then like delegate hopefully to these other those other methods, not these ones, but the not get article. Basically, we're going to be doing all these somehow.
Okay, we could start just by having it fetch the top story IDs and returning them.
Right.
Just as a step. So this is an interesting concern, right? We could, if we're talking about the isolate doing the work of parsing, you know, and say like parsing is a tough job. It's going to take a long time. We want an isolate to move that parsing of JSON off the main thread. You could do that in a couple of ways. You could have your main isolate download the stuff from the network, send it in a message to this long-running isolate that's going to parse for you, and they could send back parsed data, right? If you do that, though, you're copying the data twice, right? Because you're downloading it in one isolate, you're copying it over here in a message. It's going to do some work, and it's copying it back when it's done. A better way to do it, one of the better ways to do it, is to have the secondary isolate do the download directly, and then do the parsing, and then send it back. And so you're only doing one big copy in that scenario.
Right. And so in any case, we need to, like the isolate first needs to get the send port and save it somewhere, and then use that send port to send other stuff. And it also needs to get the data. And in our case, the data is basically the URL, right? We'll only give it like, hey, please fetch this URL for us, and maybe parse it, and then we can send the rest. So let's see if we are able to. I mean I just want to do like send port, and is message, right, and return. Right.
So didn't we just exit the function at that point with the return statement?
Yeah, and we're waiting basically. If I'm not mistaken, we're waiting for our main isolate to be like, okay, so now that you're spawned, let me send you isolate.
Okay. So
no. Yeah, sorry.
So you want a way to send the, you need to send the isolated message once it's started up, right?
Yes.
Okay. One of the ways that people often do this is they have that. So we've given the secondary isolate a send port to say, if you need to send me things back, here's how you do it. And so the secondary isolate needs to give our main isolate a send port.
Right.
And so one of the patterns people use is the first thing that comes out of the send port that you give it is the send port to send things back.
Right. So we need to do this. And I think, right?
No. So okay. So yeah. Yes, you're right.
So this is again dynamic,
mm-hmm.
and then if message, and I have a feeling we should extract this into like maybe a class that's basically kind of wrapping the isolate for us, like a worker.
Ideally, yes, we would do that.
Do we want to do it now?
We're already over halfway through this episode.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. So if it's a send port,
mm-hmm.
then we.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're basically doing the same thing except on the main side. Send port is message, and then when we get that, we know that we're ready for the other stuff to. Okay, yeah. So now that kind of breaks our async await code here. See
that.
You know, because like we're waiting for not the isolate, we're waiting for the send port.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
So I think let's try it very quickly. Class worker, and let's just do. So when we create the worker, we will create the isolate,
mm-hmm.
and then we can be like. Isolate ready. I think.
Ah, I see what you're saying. So we're going to define our own completer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just quickly take this. We also need a way to close or dispose. So let's kill, and then the receive port we don't need, I think, but we do need the send port. And here we're like, right, we probably want the isolate. Oh, right, so. Like this.
Mm-hmm.
We're just like, okay.
Not waiting on that. What's our analysis options for this this project?
Oh, I
need to do unawaited.
I think. Well, yeah. I think we're actually pretty.
I don't think we have an analysis option.
Oh, we don't. Okay. Anyway, so we have the isolate entry is here. Let's put it over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it also like lets me focus on just the isolate stuff. So I think this is a better one. Okay, and then let's make all of this private. Nobody needs to know anything about what we're doing here.
Just as a general rule and everything.
Yeah, just down. So okay, we are coming back to this. We are awaiting an isolate, and then when we get the message port back, which, okay, this is already implemented.
Mm-hmm.
We can be like, hey, the isolate is ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a completer here. Isolate.
Yeah, you could
ready.
just. Mm-hmm.
Something like this.
Yes, I would put the type parameter on that and then change completer void to just final.
Yes. Cool. And then this is basically just the isolate ready future.
Mm-hmm.
And
you need a get, I think.
Oh yeah. And then here we're like isolate ready is ready. So cool, we have the send port now, and we can bail out to this return. Just waiting for another message. And this,
yeah, you can do a return there. You can do an else or whatever you want to do.
Right. Right. I think this should be like handle
message. Yeah.
Message.
Good call.
Create a method.
May all your messages be handled. I'm enjoying your explicit dynamics. That's nice.
I'm glad you're enjoying them.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's nice.
So if message is something else, and now actually,
so are we actually gonna wait? What's the actual payoff here? The real payload?
Yeah. All right. Let's do the isolate entry. So isolate entry first gets a send port, and it just like, okay, this is my send port now, and then it. Oh
So
yeah,
it
it should also
it
send
needs to listen to its own
port.
send port. Yeah.
It should. Well, shouldn't it create a receive port and then send it back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we're doing the same thing on both sides, and this is why there's lots of helper methods like compute.
And like this pattern is not a complicated pattern really. It's like you get a pipe going one way, you get a pipe going the other way, a stream basically going one way and the other way, and so that's pretty much the case for any long-lived isolate you're going to want to write for anything. Because again, you don't really have to do isolates that often when working with Flutter. It's just not something we do much.
Yeah. And again, like
which is why we're fumbling, and it's definitely not any lack of skill on our part. We're just
we're great.
Yeah.
We're doing great.
Yeah.
So what I did here is basically the same thing. I created my own receive port, and I then it's a host that I give back to the main isolate and say like you can send anything. And as you can see, we already here in handle message, when we get the send port, we're like, yeah, oh, isolate is ready. And so now, in the interest of time, maybe we'll just do one like simple thing. So the isolate, when it gets this, that's great. But then it also should.
So what's up?
I just want to. Right, yeah. Now I need to just do this, right? Receive port and listen. And this is where basically all the magic happens. So this is another dynamic message. And we can just say, you know what? We know that what we'll get is going to be a string. Because it's going to be a URL. And then, you know what? We'll just return the string capitalized or something. Just to not.
Are we going to do the article IDs then for the?
I just want to make sure that the isolate actually works. So send port, send.
Hi.
Message, yeah. Oh.
Or just send a message back, yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be flow analysis. Come on, as string.
2 uppercase.
So, yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So we have this, and then handle message. If it's not a send port, we will just print it.
Works for me.
All right. And now we're going to add this completely unnecessary. Where was it? Oh, yeah. So we're going to create a new worker. So final worker is a worker. Then we're going to await worker isolate ready. And then we're going to be like, hey, worker.
Did we define a method for that?
Oh, we didn't. It just sends it. Wait, we didn't. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we need to like fetch article IDs or something, fetch top stories, and then have that just send a string to the isolate.
So that would be a void fetch IDs.
For now, yeah, we'll want to change it to be a list of IDs later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so that would be like a string URL, right? And that just says.
So that needs to send the message into the isolate. So it would say send port, right?
Yeah. So send port, send URL. Ooh, yeah.
And then we need to invoke that up above, and I think we can run this at that point and.
Or fetch IDs. And that's going to be hello world.
This is our URL.
and that should just print hello world capitalized.
Yes.
So let's see it. Let's see it in action.
All things being equal.
Let me show you the debug thing. It's launching. Yeah, so assuming this works, this is actually cool because now we have a worker class that can do anything for us.
Hello world.
Hello world. Yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
We've successfully capitalized 10 characters
on a different thread so that it doesn't block. You know?
That's like extra.
Yeah, and we get a malformed message.
That's interesting. Malformed message. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it can be us, right? Right.
Getting malformed message in console when spawning multiple isolates.
Oh. We are actually spawning multiple isolate, aren't we? We're spawning an isolate per each Hacker News tab. We could avoid that by doing something like the Hacker News notifier has the worker, but no, that's no. Anyway,
we may have to. Pardon me as I just pull up the SDK.
Wow. So in other news, we just got an exception. In an isolate? What? In a spawn? Oh, because we have the compute still there. Ugh. Okay.
We still have all the compute statements in place?
Yeah, I think so.
We should definitely get rid of those if they're still there.
No, let's not do that. Okay, so, yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we could just change that? But no, what we're going to do is good old cached articles ID is parse article. Story res body. Right. So hopefully we're still using compute in one place, and that is here where we're parsing story IDs, which we don't need to do that anymore, right? I mean, in the future we won't. But see, like, this is weird.
We can also just write a unit test for our isolate if we wanted to test it out that way.
Right. Let's see if we can get it back working without the malform thing when we rip out the compute method.
So we're only spinning up 2 isolates instead of.
Yeah, I think that should be fine, right? But what do I know?
Wait for it.
Deserialization error. Okay, this is new.
There it is. Deserial. That might be the. Where is it? Where's the?
Yeah, that's a thing that I don't think has anything to do with us right now.
It's trying to deserialize null.
Yeah. Which, like, where does it get the null? Oh, from.
Update article. So. All right, so it's going through the list, right?
Yeah, and
if
then
you scroll up, it's got.
This is.
Right, and then one more. There's future.wait. Update article. So what's the ID there? It's where variables are not available.
No, we're here.
Okay. Yeah, what's the ID that it's got, and what's the story res.body?
Right. Story res is okay.
Content length 4. Yeah, I think that's the we don't have an article for you thing.
Right.
And so what's the URL it's got there? Story URL. Yeah, I bet just like copy that, stick it in a browser. I bet you'll see that it's just copy value and just go plug it into Chrome there. And then, oh shoot, that's not the full thing.
Yeah, but I can imagine deserializing a null to article failed. Right, yeah, because we were calling iterator on null.
I would just skip past this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's only happening for the one. Otherwise, we'd see a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. So this is another thing that we're like.
Oh wait, or is it happening for all of them?
Yeah, deserializing. No. See, this is why we have.
So that is still just the one stack, which is getting caught in multiple places. Okay.
Right.
I'm curious why.
It's possible that they made something nullable that wasn't nullable before, and we should update the API. Is it? But no. This is a null. It's weird. I mean, maybe it's just flaky hacker news API, and that's why we want to have some error handling. Maybe in another episode. But now it makes our life harder. So maybe, as you said, maybe we should unit test.
Yeah, I think so. And that would, because we're over 45 minutes now.
Yeah.
And so we can certainly do a part 2 of this, which I think is a good idea. But we should have like a test that's like a worker test.
Yeah. All right. Let's start it. So worker can write. And so that would be.
You're more hardcore than I am. I would have just copied the test out of some other file and ripped the guts out of it.
You're probably right. So what do we want to test? Worker
capitalizes correctly. Start with that.
It doesn't actually it will. Well, okay. Worker capitalizes, and then so final worker is worker. And then async.
Yeah. So we await is ready.
Worker is ready, and it should be is ready. You're right. And then worker fetch IDs. Hello, and now we can't actually. we can like it doesn't return anything. So we should change that. But before I do that, worker dispose. Yeah. Okay, and now fetch IDs is actually a future of.
Just make it a list of ints for now. We can just return the.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
We can just return an int or something.
Okay, what do we do? Send %, and then we probably need another completer on a top level.
Yes, this is a question. How do we keep it from doing multiple requests at once?
Yeah. Well, we could just be like, if there's another request, just like
you set a flag.
Yeah. So he's a completer of list of int IDs. And now if IDs is a null,
return. Except we'd want to.
Yeah, maybe we would.
You can't do
override.
Yeah.
We won't. Yeah. So IDs is a new completer of list of int. And basically, we just return IDs future, right? And then here
when we
we're
actually
like,
get the message back, we're just printing it, I think, now.
Yeah. We're like, this is actually a list of ints. We need to do that. So if message is list of ints, then we're like, well, that's great.
If IDs is a completer, which it should be.
Right. IDs complete with message.
And I would do a conditional method access on the complete just in case. You know, question mark.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And they're going to have to null it out too before you return.
Right.
And actually, we don't, yeah.
So we could actually be like, yeah, we could like throw here. Like, what's going on?
I would just let it pass.
Yeah,
this too shall exit.
Okay, let's try it. So we are not actually expecting anything from here, but like so final result.
You could just do an expect there, right? Expect worker.fetch IDs, hello, and then do completes or completion. All my Dartpad testing work where I'm trying to copy this API for Dartpad, and then it's completion. or yeah, completion, I think, and then give it what's the
hello?
We're expecting a list of hints at this point, right? So
yeah,
what are we returning out of the thing?
We're not. I think that we're not actually like we're like
message.
Where's the isolate? Yes. So the isolate, if it gets a string, which is like a URL.
Returning a string.
Yeah.
So that needs to be just a list of ints that we give it, right? Just like a constant 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's a wonder I get paid.
So worker returns.
Yeah.
And then
that should be this 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
I believe that'll work.
Yeah.
Oh, you might need completion should take care of it.
And then let's test in tests.
Did that pass?
Yeah. It did, didn't it? That's pretty cool. Some things just work.
That's when you I don't trust it.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
So like we could.
There are monsters hiding
sometimes
somewhere. Make sure.
Yeah. Sometimes like I'm a little. So let's just
click on it
and just run this one, please. It still spins up though.
All right. Hey.
Yeah. Which is what we wanted. So
magic
back
of async matcher. Yeah.
All right. So I think we have a worker. Let's summarize. We're in the 50-minute mark.
We need another,
so we have a worker, which we're actually. Oh wow, we're using it here, never killing it, and
Good times.
Yeah. But we have that, and now it should be pretty easy for us to be like here in the refresh method to be like, hey, first get me the IDs and just wait for them, like we were waiting here. I'm not gonna, you know what? This is terrible. This is old code.
Yeah.
This is where is it? Right? It's basically just a wait for when it's ready, and then a wait for fetch IDs of some URL, and that just will happen on the isolate, and then we can use the same worker for actually parsing the articles. So I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is that we probably should have started with the unit test at the beginning.
Yes, that's a good one.
Which is never how I do it the first time. But yeah, so we should probably have a part 2 of this episode, right?
I wonder if I should just implement this now, like off record, and then come back to it. And because we had another idea.
Do, but I mean, we do one of these every 2 weeks. I don't think.
Right, okay.
We could always, when it comes out, people could leave comments about whether they want to see the rest of this or whether we should just scuttle off and do it and fix it that way. But I think there's some interesting things we still need to figure out, like what are we going to do if right now we have that future, right? And if you call fetch and the future's in place, it just returns nothing, right? Like what in
the worker?
So the method to
right, yeah, you mean fetch IDs.
So fetch IDs, right? So it returns the future there, and so which means we're going to stomp on the existing future right there, right? Like if somebody calls fetch IDs and then later we call fetch IDs again without waiting on the original future.
Yeah, we're just
gonna stomp all over this. Like we need to. There's some I think details of the interface that we might, and those are interesting details. So
yes,
which can be explored or could just be run off and done.
I mean, right now we're like, we don't care about the future anymore, right? So that's not nice, but it's probably something.
Well, because so right now, if you call fetch IDs twice, right, it sends both of those requests in, right, and it makes the completer the first one, then it sends the next one, then it goes, okay, that completer from before, I no longer care about it. I'm going to overwrite it, which means the first call to fetch IDs, that future will never complete.
Yes.
Which is probably not how we want to do this.
Well, I mean, like
in the long run, like we need to figure out a way to sensibly manage that.
I think I'm fine with that because you have a worker, and like if you're fetching, like parallelly fetching IDs from one worker, then you're
like it's on you
for breaking our code.
Okay.
Anyway. Thank you for watching, and next episode, hopefully you will get back to this because I enjoyed it, and get your code on a offline isolate, because otherwise you'll have really janky apps.
Well said. Bye, everybody.
Bye.